Today, on the provisionist perspective, we're talking about baby making, sort of. What kind of involvement does God have with that? Is it consistent on theistic determinism that God's predestined everything to say that God's granted your request, like you're actively petitioning for a baby, you're with your wife or you're with your husband, and you're actively petitioning him, as I feel like probably most of us have done. I mean, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty, obviously, but conception and all that stuff can be anxiety inducing and all that. But this is about an internet interaction that we had on X. If you're not up there, go follow us on X. It's at Provisionist P. You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram. Not particularly active on Instagram, but we are fairly active on Facebook. And also like this video, that really helps. And join the Patreon team if you enjoy this content and want to support the channel. We really appreciate all the support we can get. It's patreon.com/provisionistperspective. Without further ado, we're talking about our X interaction with the Stinky Storm a little bit. It's not one of our popular tweets, really. It just stirred up a little bit of controversy, and it was conceived, mind the pun, by Eric, and then initiated by me, like me telling Eric, hey, tweet this, like post this now, because we were having a conversation about some of this stuff. Should I just show the tweet and then we can kind of go from there and talk about it?
I'll kind of introductions. No, show it so everyone knows what we're talking about. I'll go through my process real quick, and then we'll just talk about kind of the reaction, and then I actually want to talk about the topic, unlike anybody else. I do actually want to talk about it. So
yeah, I'd like to. We'll see how long this takes. We'll probably do about an hour-ish. I wanted to have a topic to talk about, but there may be time at the end to just do a little bit of fun Q&A, depending on how long it takes us to get through this.
Yeah,
let's turn it into a bit of an AMA. Here's the tweet. Here's the
are worth talking to.
Yes. Here's the offending tweet. Yeah. The post. Yeah. The offending post. So Eric posts, Theo bros have carved. No, you read it, Eric. You posted it. You read it.
Yeah. So I said, Theo bros have carved out a special world where they can say things like God is in control, i.e., controlling all things, while also believing that their interactions with God move him. As an example, he asked and God granted his request. And who I'm talking about here, the tweet, this is the tweet that's up right now. What the original tweet was, and I just made this real quick because I'm like doing stuff at work. You know what I mean? Like I'm actually doing things. I've got stuff to do. So I just like see this. And what I do is I see this guy put out something that says that and I know he's a Reformed dude because he's got all the Reformed markers on his profile pic, and I've seen him around a bit, and I think he's got a fairly popular account. And he says that he asked for a baby and God granted him that request. And I'm like, well, that's a very interesting thing to say. Let me just search his profile real quick. And I'm going to just search for the word control. Lo and behold, multiple tweets of him repeating over and over again, God is in control. Yes, God is. And then I put controlling. Yes, God is controlling. So I'm like, that's very fascinating. So I'm going to make this tweet. The problem is I didn't even think about this. He said that he asked for a pregnancy and God granted his request. That was a strange thing for a determinist to say, even a compatibilist. Like, that's a very strange thing to say. And so I said that with a screenshot so that people would know what I'm talking about. Bad idea. There are people apparently, I mean, and I should know this. Like, this is obvious.
I called this, by the way.
You did call it. I didn't even think about it. You called it. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Did you put the screenshot up there? Like, you knew it was coming. And it had been only a few minutes or something. And already one of our tone police was on it and was just verklempt over the fact that I used this guy's.
What was that word?
Verklempt, just I don't know, just clutching pearls. And, oh, what did you do? You know, I guess there, and this is, I don't know. I've heard it somewhere. I should know this. I do know this. I forget it, and I should keep it in mind that there are these people out there that are very concerned about what other people see. Look, it's a word. They're very concerned about what other people say on the internet. Very, very concerned. I would say very concerned about what certain people. Yeah, you have to write that down. Look it up later. Put it, Drew, put it in your vernacular. Put it in the rotation.
Oh,
See
I'm
it.
gonna.
Yeah, say it a few times. See if it fits for you. You're welcome. People that are very just so concerned about what people say online. And I don't know if it's because they're bored, that they get some sort of dopamine hit over it, being very concerned. The guy that I am talking about, like him and his wife have X accounts and they talk to each other on X about personal things going on in their lives. And he like posts pictures of his personal life. Like he doesn't care. He's putting his stuff out there. And I'm just commenting on what I think is an inconsistency, that somebody who believes that God is all controlling thinks that God also granted him a request. And he could have been talking about a job or a car or anything else. It doesn't matter to me. And if that matters to you, that's kind of like a you thing. Who cares what he's talking about? And you can either believe that me deleting the screen cap after Drew, hey, by the way, the moral busybodies are going to get you. I'm like, oh, that's right. You know, and I delete the screenshot and one line which says something like congratulations, or this is terrific news. I think I said this is terrific news or something. I deleted that. You can either see that however you want. I was trying to keep it in the realm of ideas because I was just talking about the inconsistency in the idea. If you think that makes me dishonest or cowardly, whatever. I'm not. What I think is very strange, though, is this idea that like that there are people out there who believe of themselves that they know how other people should act online, that they know how other people should behave, and they're very concerned about what people say. And if somebody talks about baby news, there's only one way that you should respond to that, and you shouldn't do this with that. It's this weird world that they think they live in, where they get to talk, like they get to decide these things, and they have the moral high ground to tell people what they should do online and shame them if somebody steps a toe out of line. It's very strange where these conversations go if you just put a toe over the line, man.
Yeah. One point that you made was that somebody was saying, you know, the scriptures say rejoice with those who rejoice. And you said in the voice message to me, you know, I just think it's so funny that they think that Paul, in writing to the church in Rome, had in mind future online interactions where somebody posts about their conception or birthday or whatever else, and you just gotta rejoice with them if they're rejoicing. That's like the rule, you know. And I just thought that was a really salient point as far as like,
well, I said that to him.
How are we making these? Yeah.
You're just gonna use Paul as justification for your tone policing online. I just, you know, my behavior is on me. And, you know, if I call somebody names, or, you know, if I behave badly online, that's on me. You know, I have responsibilities there. It's not like I can act or do whatever I want to do and everybody's just got to get over it. And it's this man up, buddy. I say whatever I want to say. It's not that. It's just the dude said something that I thought was incongruous. He puts his life out there anyway. And I commented on it. I don't know. Do you want to talk about how weird it is for someone who believes that God is controlling all things meticulously, and what he's controlling is his eternal decree, where he decided to give you a baby in eternity past, for you to say that you requested something of him? And the only substantive response that I got, and this is what I want to talk about, the only substantive response I got was once this person got over their offense, was that, well, God uses means.
And this wasn't even the person that the post was about that was like
No.
really seemingly deep.
He's white knighting for someone. He's white knighting for somebody who doesn't care. This guy doesn't care about tone online. Obviously, he's got the "I'm a racist" red eye thing, on his profile pic, which he's not saying he's a racist. He's saying he doesn't care if you think he is one, and what he's doing that whole thing. I don't know if he's a racist or not. I have no idea. And here's one of the guys that's super concerned about my tone online. Here he is. He's just so concerned.
The circus is live, my friend. Welcome to the circus. This is why we're on X, is to bring you into the circus. We want you to watch the circus and engage with the circus. So that's
what animal am I?
We made it.
What circus animal am I wonder.
Is doofus an animal? I feel like that's or is it like
goober? Is goober an animal?
Goober. We get called that.
Yeah. So what he said is that like, oh, well, God uses means. Obviously, of course, that's consistent with Calvinism. Okay. But that's not what the guy said. What the guy said is he asked and God honored his request, granted him his request.
And he used the word granted, which was like the specific word that we were like, granted, how does that fit?
And so if this guy is inconsistent with Reformed theology, go talk to him. Or maybe we could talk about how if your theologians, which he quoted some people, I forget who he was quoting, but if your theologians are also saying the same thing, that God meticulously determines everything from his eternal decree, but also he is going around granting requests, and your interactions with him move him in some way, well, then you're inconsistent too. Like those three, can we still talk about this? Because those theologians then are also inconsistent. Let's keep talking about this. And then the conversation ended when, instead of responding to any of that, he said, he requoted me again saying, I think it's, and I stand by this, it's 100% silly for someone who believes God is meticulously controlling all things to say that God granted him a request. He asked the loaded question, something like, do you really think that this is an honest representation of our position? Do you really?
When have you stopped beating your wife, Eric?
Yeah. When did you stop beating your wife? Do you really think? Oh, okay. So we're back to
this is
morally praying.
And this comes back down to we'll get into kind of some of the substance of the tweet here. And I want to show you guys something that Eric said that I thought was salient as well. But what this comes down to is what you said in the beginning. You can either believe me when I say, I'm just doing theology applied here. I saw this on my timeline. I thought better of posting the screenshot, so I edited it. Can we please talk about the theology applied? You can either believe that, or you can choose to conclude that, we're circus and we're just being stupid or dishonest or whatever with the clicks and views and stuff. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You can believe that we're lying, or I guess that we're like so self-deceived that we don't see it or whatever. But we've told you, why the edits were made or why the changes were made. Let's move on. But then the criticism would have to be dealt with, and then that brings me to this. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about this. This is what you said. You said, well, I'm gonna let you read it again. It's your tweet.
Yeah. Come on. I don't believe. So what he said was this is the response to do you really think that this is an accurate representation? So I said, I don't believe you're capable of admitting that we're representing any Reformed view fairly, short of just agreeing full-throatedly. You had admitted, if you admitted that we were representing you honestly, you would be obliging yourself to take seriously any criticism that comes from after that accurate representation. It's much easier to continually suggest we are dishonest and insincere, so that we have to defend ourselves. We have to constantly go, no, I really am honest. I really am sincere. No, let me prove it to you. And it's this never defined, unobtainable satisfaction that we are never going to reach. So it's my opponent is a bad person, so their arguments can't be valid debate trick that both the woke right and the woke left. I can't believe there's a woke right now, but there is.
Real.
used. They both use it, and it's just like I'm not going to do any of that. And like, I would hope that people would have the self-reflection that even if you think we're playing some sort of like engagement farming game for our podcast, and sometimes when we do spicy tweets like your awesome Kung Fu Panda meme, it's just
I just
chef's
stole that
kiss.
from the internet and
exactly.
posted
Just
it
chef's
because why
kiss.
not? Yeah.
You know, awesome. Sometimes we're engaged in that sort of thing to be punchy and to, you know, push our viewpoint online and to make memes about our viewpoint online and push those and get engagement and things like that. And even if you think we are engaged in that all the time, like we never stop doing that, the game that you're engaged in is not any more moral, I don't think, which is to go around, you know, getting your fainting couch out every single time one of your theological opponents behaves in a way you don't like online. That's also a game. Like the person who saw this edit, and maybe he saw the edit, maybe he saw it before I changed it, I don't know, hit up the bat signal and they all came. Like, you're the one hitting up the bat signal on this thing. And you're getting a handful of your bros, including the guy that it was originally about, to come dunk on us after you saying dunks are bad. Is that more moral of a game? I don't think so.
Either dunking is good or dunking is bad. You know,
but then he came back and said there's good reasons for dunks and insults. So it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
so there's
well,
good
there's
reasons for dunks and insults.
And it comes back down to the like people that think that they're peering into our hearts to see impure motives for the things that we post online. And listen, I will be the first to admit I post things to generate engagement and to come to the podcast and to grow the platform and get our voices and our content out there. That's the whole point of, if you have, especially if you have a podcast and that podcast is on social media, that's the whole point. I'm not going to make any excuses about that. And you can argue about valid and invalid ways of doing that. I don't know, but that just seems ultimately subjective. And I think, I posted online, I did a poll. I was supposed to shave before I did this broadcast, but hopefully you guys can't see it too much. It's looking pretty rough.
Well, now we're looking. Now that you said something, now we're staring.
Now I'm gonna talk like this the whole rest of the time.
Yeah.
I posted a poll that basically just said, if someone posts about their personal life online, is that open and subject to critique? And most people said that yes, it was okay. And I think that there are certain things that just get us in trouble, that it's like theology applied. Like, this is the second time that this is, I mean, there's probably been a few times that it's happened. But one time in particular, I remember posting, it was around when Israel and Gaza were starting up their stuff, I think. And there was so I knew this was trending, and I wanted to do some theology applied to it. And so I found a juicy pic of an explosion or something, and I said something about, imagine complaining about something that was immutably predestined from before the foundation of the world for God's glory, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. And people, lose their minds over this. And from memory, and that there was another one that was with Ukraine, where I said something, where we had that whole broadcast and that interaction with he who should not be named. That was like, imagine saying God is controlling all of these like murders and deaths and invasion and stuff. And he who shall not be named lost his mind. Everybody lost their mind. And it just seems like whenever we do like some kind of theology applied on the side of Calvinism, theistic determinism, people just can't handle it. It's like it's always inappropriate to do any kind of theology applied. It seems to me. And
well, I think that's what it's about. And I think it's about, it is a very clear example. And by the way, I just want to address this real quick, Amber. How often does Drew have to tone police Eric? Often. Let me tell you.
Eric tone polices me too.
That's true. So that's what I think it is that it is a very, I stand by that this is a very poignant example of how Calvinism does not work in real life. I believe that this, yes, permit, grant, respond, answer are all inconsistent with theistic determinism, but they can't escape reality. So, can't escape reality. I believe that this person has a relationship with God, an actual relationship. I don't agree with half the things he says, but I don't see any reason to believe otherwise. He has a relationship with God, and in his conversations with God, which he's actually having, because divine simplicity is false, then he gets a response from the Lord, and he is granted a request, and he feels that comfort, he feels that blessing, he feels that relationship with the divine creator who can do any of these things because he's living and breathing and active, and this guy knows it because he has a relationship with him, and he knows that, and he just says it. And I believe pointing that out is a very poignant example of inconsistency. And so the knee-jerk reaction is to go, how dare you talk about his baby? How dare you talk about the murder of Ukrainians, or the bombing of Gaza, or the murder of Israelis? Like, how dare you? And there's a reaction to talk about the accident of the thing rather than the substance of the thing, because the example is so good, it feels offensive, and they have to run off to another explanation of why it feels offensive, rather than it cuts to the heart of their beliefs and may cause them to reconsider whether they actually believe their theology, where they actually live their theology, right? So what he intuits, he dismisses due to his presuppositions. I'm offended. This is Warren saying, I'm offended. You clearly demonstrated the problems of my system. I really think that's what it is that they are demonstrating the problems of their system on their own. I don't have to say anything. I just have to go like, God granted you a request. You asked him for a job and he gave it to you. How does that fit with you believing that God decreed for you to have the job or not, and it had nothing to do with you from eternity past, before you ever existed, before even creation? You believe that God granted you this job at this time. He gave you this job at this time immutably. You already had it. And yet now you're saying that he granted your request. You just contradicted yourself, that you believe, that you actually live out what you believe, what you say you believe. And I think that is completely and wholly inconsistent. I'll keep pointing that stuff out when we see it. This also reminds me of Judas giving examples of times where this kind of theology applied has gotten us in trouble. And I was at the time trying to have more discussions on Discord, because Discord is like the place where all this stuff is happening now, and there's these havens for reformed channels and reformed back scratching online, and they'll sometimes let us crash the party and have discussions with us. So I was kind of in one of these circles. I was in one of these Discord channels, and if any of you remember, and if you OG Choice Meets remember, I had this post about, it was back when they were called tweets, about, it said something like Calvinist bumper sticker, God gave you cancer. And it was based upon something James White said, which is, there's no meaningless evil or something like that. And so I said, Calvinist bumper sticker, God gave you cancer. And I said, probably, James White probably, or something. And that got people in a lot of, they got us like blocked by James White at that time. And those guys in that Discord channel just thought that was out of pocket. They thought I was out of pocket for saying that. And Calvinist bumper sticker, God gave you cancer. When what you're saying is that what your theology actually says is that God immediately decreed for that to happen for his glory. So we do have a Discord channel, the Free Gracer. Why is this is not being my friend anymore? Here we go. Yeah, we do. If you join our patron team, you get to be on our Discord. That is how that works. If you haven't been blocked by James White, are you even a Christian, bro? That is, you know what? That's a good point. The cognitive dissonance, and that is a term I used in the tweet replies. That is a cognitive dissonance, and that I'm going to keep pushing back on this stuff whenever we see it. That if you believe God immediately decreed for you to have this job from eternity past, and then you say, "Oh, He granted my request," I find that silly and ridiculous. Sorry, and I'm going to keep saying that. Whether you're talking about your family planning or you're talking about your career or anything else, it's really silly. And then I related it back to remember the God gave you the Calvinist bumper sticker. God gave you cancer. Remember that?
That's what
Same
got us
thing.
blocked by who he shall not be named.
James White. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, in that case, it's like your theology plainly stated in the mouths of other people, you hate it, you know, even though that, like, you believe that. You know, I can say, and I've learned this recently, if I say Calvinists believe that God is the author of sin, the author of all evils, that's false when I say it, because I believe on the inside that entails that it means that God is guilty of authoring all sin. But if I'm a Calvinist and I say God is the author of all evils, but I mean in such a way that he is not morally guilty for that, and he authors it in such a way that he's not morally guilty, now I'm representing Calvinism rightly. So it depends on like what you believe. Like, even if I said something accurate, but I personally believe that entails something bad, then somehow now I'm misrepresenting. And I can't count how many times recently I've seen lots of philosophically minded Calvinists, compatibilists say, you know, yes, God has determined everything. He is the author of all sin. But it depends on what you mean by that. Let's talk about this. And I can respect that from a philosophical point of view. It's just annoying when I say it and then I get accused of misrepresentation.
But what's so funny about this too is that whenever you start trying to do theology applied, they're often swimming around this is the accusations of emotionalism. That, oh, you're just trying to get emotional about this. But it's okay. It's not okay when we get emotional, which I'm not saying we're not emotional. I don't think that the goal of the Christian life is to reach some sort of stoicism where emotions don't play into anything at all. I don't think that's the goal of the Christian life. I don't think God created our souls that way. God has emotions that are real, and we do, and he gave us emotions that are real too. And the point is not to be controlled and guided by them, but to hold those emotions captive to Christ. That's the point. But that doesn't mean you don't feel your emotions. People hear that, I think, sometimes and think like a Christian stoicism where then you don't feel them at all, or they don't affect you at all. There's no pain when it comes to these things. And that's so when I talk against emotionalism, that's not what I mean. I don't think we should deny our emotions. These things are emotional. Arguments are emotional. Theology is emotional. Everything is. Our entire lives are emotional. It just depends on how controlled we are by them and what you do with them. That being said, it's not an emotional argument. It's not based on emotion. When we say, and this is something that Warren I think this is why they hate him so much, is because he is willing to say the thing all the way. And he's willing to say all the way that, like, you believe that God determined horribly heinous evil things, including how long they go on and how severely that they go on. So when someone is abusing a child, you believe God, for his own glory and in some good way, determined how long that goes on and in what way, how many minutes exactly what happens at each minute. You believe that, and he is willing to say that out loud. And when he does, he's either just reviled or it's, oh, you're emotional. And yet, when somebody on our side, when somebody says, hey, God granted me a pregnancy, and I go like, that doesn't work, they can get all emotional and go, oh, I can't believe you said that. You're talking about his baby. You're talking about his that kind of emotion is okay though.
Right. Well, and this brings me to something that is related. Since this just goes full circle, Eric. Here you go. I wanted to show this to everyone.
Verklempt.
Verklempt. Can you guys see this? Is that on the screen? Oh, yeah. So this is the word that Eric used earlier. Verklempt. I thought it would have been a C, but it's a K. And it says overcome with emotion. They're just verklempt at us having posted this. And I thought this was interesting as a bit of a linguistically interested person. So this is the origin is from German Yiddish. And you can see that this is from verklempt to German, meaning literally pinched or squeezed. which I think is really interesting.
So
it's kind of like the whoever the dog that yelped is the one that you hit. When you throw a ball, a rock into a pack of dogs, the one that yelped is the one you hit. This is like verklempt means squeezed. So somebody got squeezed, and they're just overcome with emotion and respond that way.
The other one that I love. This is we got to bring it back. I want to bring this back. Is that that it rustles your jimmies? Like your jimmies are rustled? I just love that one.
I've heard you. You're like the first person that I've ever heard to say that, and that's a good one. Yeah. So this, this goes into a little bit of theology applied, and I don't know, Eric, how much thinking you've done about this. And I was having a conversation with my wife on this subject. I don't remember how long ago it was. I think it was in the pre-kid era, in the pre-child era, PCE. And we were talking about, I think we were leading some Bible studies for students, and we were doing like Christ in the scriptures, and we would do like Christ in Genesis, Christ in Exodus, and so on, and kind of see the prefigured Christ symbols and all that different stuff. And I think it was around the time that we got to 1 Samuel that it talks about Hannah and how she's barren. And I forget the exact phrase that it uses. Someone in the chat can look it up if they want, or Eric if you want to use the precise language, but it talks about how God gave conception. And I found that quite challenging. I feel like this must have been around the time when we were trying or thinking about having children or something. And I found that quite I don't know if it was challenging or whether it was just like, okay, like this is you got to put this in your theological pipe and smoke it. Like it seems like scripturally, whenever any child is born, although maybe I'm committing like the is it called the non-central fallacy, where you take a particular example and then you say, see, this applies everywhere. So maybe God had a specific purpose for Samuel and he gave her conception, and otherwise he allows a certain amount of free reign. How that goes into like God injecting the soul and all that stuff, I don't know. But it did persuade me that God does this, with a
you can say that God does this rather than, you don't have to go all the way and say that God always does this. You can say that it is something that he does. So it's the same thing when he says, I bring calamity and I bring destruction. Well, that's the thing he does. That doesn't mean that every calamity, that doesn't mean determinism.
Right.
But it is definitely a thing he does.
Yeah. And so it's definitely a thing. And you see this example before you of someone praying and God giving conception. And I think it would be perfect. It's perfectly fine and biblically consistent for anyone to say, God granted us this child, granted us our request,
Sure. And that's consistent on our world. It's our word. You don't get to use it, and that's, it's our word. That's kind of what I want Christendom to know. That's what I want internet Christianity, people who are theologically minded on the interwebs to know, is that anytime you hear someone who believes in theistic determinism of some kind, even if it's compatibilism, and they talk in such a way that it's allow or grant or respond or some kind of language like that, I want it to go in your brain and go inconsistent. That free will lives in their bones, and they know that they live in a free will universe. They know that this is how this works, and they are saying that in contrast to what they say they believe in their theology. So anytime any of these theologians use that, I want you to kind of have what is that? Wait a minute, and then if you read something where a Reformed theologian says like, oh, well, yes, this includes the means of you asking. His determinations include him using you asking to bring that about, and this kind of thing. I want you to be encouraged to find that utterly meaningless. Go ahead. I give you permission to just find that to be inadequate to answer the charge of in making sense of our human experience. In our experience with God as Christians, we know that we are in a living, breathing relationship with him. We know we're in a conversation. We know that he grants us things and takes things away from us. We understand that. Does a free will theist view make more sense of that? Or does a theistic determinist view make more sense of that?
Right. And this brings me to kind of like a related point. And I guess I just wanted to share this because I know, Eric, you and I have different views on divine providence and prayer and stuff, because really this is tied up in prayer, obviously. And we did an episode on whether or not God changes his mind. It's a little bit shorter than our average episode. And we both agree that prayer does change God's mind. And by the way, there's a fantastic book out there called "And Then God Changed His Mind." And the subtitle is like "When His People Dared to Ask Him." It's a real short book. It's real readable. I think Rev Reeds did a review of the book. If you want to go check that out on his channel at my request, I said, hey, you really need to read this. It's really great. And so Eric and I are going to disagree a little bit about how this cashes out. But then so I posted this earlier today on that subject. Well, let me be clear. I stole this from someone else. The tweet is word for word. No, actually, the tweet is modified to fit so that people don't have to click see more. Because I knew if people have to click see more, they will scroll right past it. They won't like it. They won't engage with it. They won't comment. So I did. Eric, chat. This is what the world has come to. I copied and pasted this thing, which I had already put on Facebook, and I put it in chat. And I put it in Chat GPT. I was like, make this 3 words shorter. And it took me and then I went on X and I posted it, and then it said see more, and I'm like, dang it. And then I copied and pasted that and put it back in. I was like, remove 2 or 3 more words. And then I did that I don't know, two times before I posted this up. So anyways, just in case you wanted to know the process behind some of these tweets and stuff. And I wrote, I stole this from someone. It's a bit modified. Why fear that if God can change his mind, his character would change? This is a common objection that we receive when we're kind of advocating for this God changing his mind in response to prayer issue. Because it also granted kind of sounds like something that God hadn't yet settled his mind on. And then you might have changed his mind, the timing or whatever of that. And so that's kind of the crux of this, our critique is how can you say granted if he has already decided everything? It just doesn't make sense. So
that's what Amber is asking here. If exhaustive time determinism sets everything before creation, then how does it make sense that God can even interact and give or grant anything? It doesn't.
I think he can. I think that he can. I would say this. I think that he can interact, and I would say that he can give, because these are all actions that can be just initiated by him. He interacts, right? And then he gives. But grant feels like this give and take type language, or as Seth Dillon has pointed out before, I think in a conversation with he who shall not be named, that divine intervention doesn't make any sense if you believe an immutable divine decree has locked everything in. There's no intervention. There's just God making sure that everything goes according to his plan, because intervene makes it sound like it's going this way and then it changes, but that's not what happens. Like it was never going to change anyways.
And then Warren says this: a free and living God is terrifying to the natural man, and so they flatten it out. I think that's a big, Drew, you and I have talked about this before. I think that is a big part of this, that if you believe that, and you say it out loud and you like really think about it and you let it into your heart, into your soul, you believe that everything isn't set before from the creation of the world, everything isn't, then that must mean to some degree what happens to you is your responsibility. The bad things, the good things, that your choices can move that to some degree. And
like it, and to be, for the philosophically minded that are watching this, like it could have been otherwise. Like it literally could have gone the other way, because we can quibble about what it means to be responsible, but we're talking about like you have the ability to actually move the needle. And such that once you cross that point and you look back, you can say and believe in it be true, I could have done differently than what I did. Full stop, categorically.
And that truly is kind of terrifying, that yes, there is someone out there. It's a horrible thought that there is someone out there who won't come to Christ because of something you said or did not say or did not do. Because God said, go do this. And you said, no, there's this expansion of the kingdom that will not happen because you're not doing it. That there is this sphere of influence that God has given you, and the kingdom will not be advanced there unless you are faithful to it and skilled at it, trained at it, adequate at it, that you can fail and then God has to find someone else to go do it, and it won't happen in that way, and it won't happen with these people. That is fairly terrifying to think about. And so, nope, everything is just determined, and it ultimately doesn't matter what I said or how I did it or whatever. Is just kind of comforting.
And this, yeah, absolutely. This segues us nicely into me once again self-promoting, if you'll permit me, Eric,
yes.
and audience. If you want to invest in something that would not happen unless you invested in it and unless you prayed for it, go check out the campaign that I highlighted with Brian Wagner the other week, givesendgo.com/toys, and then the number 4 gospel, toys for gospel. You can go on there and watch our video. Let me know if the volume is really terrible. I may need to re-upload or something, because it seems like it's not getting as much engagement. And I wonder if that's just because people can't hear it and they click off of it. But go check that out, givesendgo.com/toys, the number 4 and gospel. I won't play the full video up here because I don't have it queued up, and that'll take more time. But go check that out, please. We would really appreciate it if you at least watch it and prayerfully consider investing in that. And now I want to say that there's, well, first let me read the rest of this tweet, because this speaks to what you've just said, Eric. It says, why fear that if God changes his mind, his character would change? If God's nature is trustworthy and loving, he'll keep his promises. He won't send believers to hell on a whim. He's promised eternal life. So there's a certain amount of fear that, especially maybe around eternal security, and that like God can just change his mind about me and send me to hell or whatever. And then, but Eric, you've made the point also that like, yes, this is a fearful thing. And this is why God gives us opportunities, and why there's this quote from a from a song lyric, who Idol Killer is supposed to have this guy on. He's a lead singer, showbread. I think he's pretty much doing it now on his own, Josh Porter. He says, I'm haunted by the specter of possibilities escaping.
Yeah.
If what God does is always good and could happen no other way, then it would not be good if one less died or if one more soul is saved. So this cuts both ways. We're haunted by the specter of possibilities escaping, or there's this alternate view that you have. And I think what he says there is logical and makes sense. And there's a sense of fear surrounding, like, it seems to me, if this is my responsibility, I'd rather believe that. And I'm not saying everybody makes this decision. I'm just saying that I can see the comfort in this. And I personally, believe me, see the comfort in theistic determinism and have been meditating and mulling. My brain doesn't shut off, y'all, but over different things. And just like this, I can see, I get where this is coming from. Like, everything's supposed to go this way. That will be much easier to buy. And I just biblically can't. Like, philosophically, I can see the arguments and I can see the emotional comfort and stuff like that, but I just don't get there biblically. I just can't get there biblically. So here I stand, I can do no other. And
that's biblically speaking, to what you're saying is that the Bible constantly is like, God will fulfill his promises because of his loving kindness towards you, because of who he is, not because he is all powerful and decided everything. Like, the Bible doesn't say that. There's so many times, especially in the historical sections, especially as the Old Testament tells the story of Israel, where Israel is crying out like, Lord, why are things this way? Why did you leave us here? You brought us out in the wilderness so that we would die, and now we're in the land and we're surrounded by enemies. Why have you made this happen? And one of the answers is like, because you stink, like you blew it, and these things you did wrong. And then the other thing is, yes, but I am still here, and my promises to you will not pass away. I will fulfill them because of who I am. That's an amazing opportunity to say, these things are happening to you because I decided that they would. These things, but other things will happen to you because I'm controlling that they would. That's an amazing opportunity to say that, to comfort people and explain to the Israelites that what's happening to you has just been decided. That's just the way it's going to go. And then, when it gets better, that's just the way it's going to go too. Except that's not what the Bible ever grounds it in. It grounds it in the character of God, and then also in their mistakes and what they did.
And it's interesting too, because God consistently points to how he has been and what he has done to, like, validate his character in their eyes, right, so to speak. Look at how I've been with you. Look at how I've been faithful with you. In Malachi, where he talks about, it's because of my faithfulness that I don't, if what is it? I can't remember. It's basically like, if I, the Lord, do not change, and if I did, then you would be destroyed. And what he's saying is, I'm faithful to my character. I'm faithful to my promises. I'm not just going to destroy you, right? Like, because I've made certain promises to you, Israel, and I'm not going to go back on those. And so he points backwards to what he's done in order to validate this, and not saying that he's got some kind of immutable ontological thing that doesn't change, and that's why you can trust him. I know that there are philosophical arguments out there for that. I don't think passages like Malachi are getting you there. I don't. But yeah, and so, and this brings me to a little bit of this pushback here. And I appreciate this brother. We've interacted quite a bit with him, and things have been cordial as far as I know and remember. I'm not sure what his name is. In my mind, his name is Gene, because it's like the J Dean Har. So in my mind, your name is Gene, brother. I don't know. So he asks, the question is, what is meant by God changes his mind? Did he encounter a better argument, something unforeseen that changes the dynamic? A person persuades him of a better way, or is it simply a change of direction, one he anticipated? And lots of Christians are going to answer this differently. Eric and I are going to answer this differently. Warren and I might answer it differently than someone like Chris Fisher or Will Hess, or I don't know. And so, I said this kind of trying to take the middle ground, so to speak, just something that we can all affirm. And I asked this question: what's the difference between a change of direction, which is what he said here, change of direction, and a change of plan? Because that's really what we're talking about in places like Jeremiah 18 and Exodus 32. Both are headed towards one particular outcome, and God's change, God's decision to change, moves it towards another. In other words, I don't see why we can't all get behind this. And whether or not you think that's consistent on certain views, compatibilism, open theism, provisionism, traditionalism, whatever, is another question of consistency. But it certainly seems thoroughly biblical to me. I don't know how to get around it, or else I believe
Right.
it.
Why do I have to ground the promises of God in some sort of unchangeable, fixed timeline event thing? Well, why do I have to see the universe and everything that's going to happen to it as fixed in the mind of God and then acted out in time in order to trust God? Why?
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I don't have this intuition, this concern, this fear that people have, that if God could change his mind about one thing, he could somehow whimsically change his mind about anything and everything. I just don't understand how that follows. And we were having some conversation about this in a Facebook group, and that's where I stole this quote from that I put up here. And we were talking about theories of time and all of that different stuff, and that someone was arguing that God being outside of time, much like you would affirm, Eric, is a prerequisite for saying that God doesn't change. And we talked about that a little bit. And I won't get into it because I won't quote or summarize properly, but it was an interesting discussion and didn't make sense to me. But I guess, either God's predestined us all to think differently, or we have different intuitions freely about libertarianly freely.
I'll say that the outside of time thing, I'm a lot less comfortable with that than I used to be. In terms of, I guess I don't know what I mean by outside of time anymore. And I would have to invest. I don't see the problem with saying that God is outside of time. And I guess I also don't see the problem with saying that that's not how time works. That's not how reality works. There is a future that's actually real, and it hasn't happened yet, actually. I don't see the problem with that at all. And especially if you're talking about God's character, if you ground who he is in his character, which he just kind of always does. It's so silly. He just always grounds what he's doing in his character. He doesn't do it in these philosophical ways. He just decides that the approach he's going to take is to compare himself to the other gods, which are fickle and not real and taking a poop and all of this stuff, right? Like he just does it. He just always compares himself to the other gods and says, I'm not like that. I'm actually like this. And then shows his character and his loving kindness to Israel and his loving kindness to us. And then shows his character in Christ and all these kinds of things. Like he just always does this. And so whatever view of time you have, you don't need that to see God as trustworthy. I don't get it.
Yeah. I don't really, the whole time thing is just such a can of worms, but it's often, to me, it's a way of conceptualizing God and how it is that if you separate it from the classical theism, divine simplicity issue, for the more normal theologically minded that are, say God's outside of time or he's in every moment or whatever kind of thing, it seems like that's more of a way to say how is it that he knows the future as exhaustively settled? It must be that he sits outside of it.
Got it.
And I heard an
Right.
illustration once from my pastor that, he held up a CD, like this is a CD, obviously. CDs, rest in peace, right?
Do I even have those? Yeah. Do I even have one nearby? Yeah, exactly.
But records on the other hand. So he was saying, with a CD, the laser goes around it like this and it reads it, right? So that's kind of like you're listening to the music and stuff like that. But if you look down on it, then you see the whole thing. You're looking at the whole picture or whatever. And that's how people conceptualize as to how God can know all of the information on the disc without having traveled it sequentially or whatever, I guess. So he has to be kind of beyond that. So that's kind of an illustration that I've heard before that I guess makes some sense, but then if you unpack it, it starts to cause some issues. But we didn't come here to talk about theories of time, even though that's fun. That's good fun stuff. And
but I think what it goes back to the stuff that the theistic determinist is trying to avoid. That if they believe in their hearts and in their souls that they have a living, breathing relationship with a living, breathing God, and he actually does grant things to them that he wouldn't have if they didn't ask, and they can move him. There's all kinds of these fears and all kinds of these things that go along with that they believe that this theistic determinist view assuages. And this goes back to, you don't need it though. Rant over.
Yeah. It definitely seems like there's a problem that's trying to be avoided. I have no problem with admitting that people have sincere beliefs about the scriptures and that they're not necessarily really emotional, and that's why they're coming to this conclusion that's false because their emotions are clouding their judgment or whatever. I mean, ultimately, if you're arriving at a false conclusion, something's going wrong along the way. I don't know what that is. I'm not a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. The point is I think that you're not necessarily a bad person just because you have false beliefs. As it seems like, we engage in this online discourse, it inevitably kind of devolves into this like, no, you're just a bad person. You're insincere. And then it just becomes like, they don't have to engage with you, And that's why I put this up here that you read earlier, which was basically like if you stick to this line of critique, this vague line of misrepresentation, there's nothing besides full-throated agreement that you would accept, then you can just dismiss us as not understanding or not being sincere. And then there's the standard of seriousness and all of this that I don't have to deal with you unless you beat my particular standard. I guess, you're not responding to the critique. So
yeah, and I think this goes back to our episode on Dort with Warren. Is kind of even back.
I'm never co-streaming with him ever again, by the way.
No, you're right. No, you shouldn't. It's never happened.
Warren, your episode got 3,000 views on that episode, and ours didn't even break 1,000, and you don't even have a thumbnail for it. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm jealous. I'm not sharing. You can just upload it later.
It's ours. You don't get to take from us again, Warren. Okay.
No, I'm glad that we got to promote. That was when we promoted his campaign and his need and stuff. So I'm glad we got the opportunity to do that. But I am lamenting the view.
Yeah. But it's even then what they were doing in their disputes with the Arminians, and when that was happening, and that kind of breakaway over limited atonement and everything, they equated those in their official documents. I mean, this was dozens of bishops talking about that for weeks, and then publishing what they agreed with, at least some sort of consensus. And what they did was they equated acceptance of their theology with sanctification, that you are increasingly more Christ-like if you accept these theological facts. And so this is just the same outpouring plus social media. I mean, I think that these guys would talk, these ancient bishops of repute would talk in this exact same way if they had X. back then. That's just, it's that same idea pushed forward, that if you don't accept these theological facts, then there's something about your character that's going on. There's something about your sanctification that's going on. It can't be that you are a faithful Christ follower just like me. And this is how I used to think. I used to think this way. I was a Calvary Chapelite. I was very, very much, this is the right way to go about things. And then I went to seminary, and I was faced with people and interacting with people from all kinds of places. Anglicans, like I'm hanging out with this Anglican guy, and he loves Jesus just as much as I do. I can't deny it. He's sitting in front of me. We're having these conversations, and yet he like puts on vestments every Sunday. And I'm like, what is this? What are you? I didn't know what, my brain short circuited, and I had to rethink my whole paradigm about what is a Christ follower. And then these people who I disagreed with so strongly, I realized that they're doing so because of their love. They are coming up to these positions that I just disagree with, but they're coming to these positions because of their love for Jesus, and not because they're weak or insincere or less educated. They're more educated than me and have been doing this longer than me and actually are more faithful than me. So, and I disagree. So what do I do with that? Well, I've got to kick out the whole right thinking equals sanctification thing. That has to go out the window first, and then I can reform my thinking here. And I don't believe some of these people have done that. There are people who have done that. You can tell. There's one guy that we often interact with, and I'm blanking on his name right now. I wish I could give him a shout out because he's awesome, but he's reformed and he disagrees with us. But
is that Joe? Josiah?
Yes. Well, no, Josiah. Yes. That was the guy I had the space with. But no, there's Elijah Caustic or
okay. Yeah. Elijah. Yeah. He's the guy that he's pretty all right. Yeah.
Where like, yeah, he disagrees with us, and that gets heated sometimes, but he's also not doing the whole, well, it's because you lack character or sanctification or whatever. He's not doing that thing. And it's like, oh, we can actually have a conversation then.
Yeah, he doesn't. In response to your thing there, he doesn't ask you who hurt you. He doesn't ask you who. Show me on the doll, Eric. Which one of the Calvinists hurt you on the doll? Tell me, show me.
all because when someone says, "Do you really think?" Because I didn't take that question sincerely, then that's something's going on in here. I need to go touch grass or something.
Right. Yeah, Eric. Go touch grass. Come on.
I did touch
sure,
grass.
We could all use a little bit of grass.
Yeah,
I've got some fake grass out here. I've got some turf I can go and touch.
Hey, somebody make sure that you clip out where Drew just said, "Oh, we all need to go get some grass." Just clip that out and put some sort of marijuana smoking meme to it, and then just.
I was thinking about the racist comment that you made earlier, and I was thinking, oh man, somebody's gonna clip that, and it's gonna be all over the internet and stuff.
I'm a racist. Set to
Eric
music.
Calling someone. Yeah.
Racist.
Join our patron team here on Provisionist Perspective. We really appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate all of our patron support. I wish I had all of your names in front of me so that I could read them like they do on Talkville. I feel like that might be something good. Should we start reading patron names at the end of the broadcast?
That'd be cool.
Hit that like button. Join the patron team. We appreciate you all. And until next time, be blessed and go be a blessing.
See ya.
Oh yeah, and join the look. I have an overlay here. Here, look. Join. Go follow us on Twitter at ProvisionistP. Back when it was a little bird. Okay. All right. See you later.